It's another creation from those bladesmiths in Italy at Lionsteel. This one manufactured for Dendra knives. It's the Typhoon. Stay tuned, guys. Hi gang, Rob here. It is the morning of 6 January 2014. Yeah, it's a Monday morning. I'm not at work. I'm making YouTube videos. Why? We have a foot of snow that dropped on us yesterday, Sunday the 5th. And now it's about 10 below and everybody's home and staying warm, and we've got a weather emergency. So, it's not really a knife review today, just sort of a look at a knife that has been sent to me for sharpening by my viewer and customer Richard. Kind of a plain brown wrapper, isn't it? Not much to tell from that label. Not much to tell from that label. But the box looks kind of familiar, doesn't it? It's about the same size and shape as this box. Let's see what's inside. What we have here is a Dendra Typhoon. Manufactured for Dendra knives by Lionsteel in Italy. And you guys know I've got a bit of an affinity for Lionsteel. Done some reviews on their SR1 and SR1A series of knives, and did a pretty long series of videos on the Pull Force Mic 1, which is another contracted knife that Lionsteel manufactures. This one, the Dendra series of knives, which let's see, they have a family of products, the most expensive of which I believe is the Defender, which is a tactical knife that's a titanium frame lock. And then there is the Typhoon, which this is, and then the Deer Hunter. Those two knives both liner locks, and it seems like there's another one. Oh yeah, the Tiger Jump. That's also a titanium frame lock with a compound grind, like a nightmare grind. The two least expensive ones, the Typhoon and the Deer Hunter, are both stainless steel liner locks with G10 scales on the Typhoon, micarta on the Deer Hunter. It's sort of an interesting knife. This one has a blade shape, I think, that is fairly familiar. When I first looked at this knife in pictures and online, it reminded me of something. I thought this blade was very onion-like, and I sort of jogged the archives of my brain. This knife, in form, in function, in dimension, is sort of a copy to me of the Zero Tolerance ZT-0200. Designed by Ken Onion for Zero Tolerance. They're very close in blade shape, in handle construction, even size and weight. They're very close. The designer of this knife, now that I've indicted him, I believe this gentleman is from Russia, and I don't know if the camera can pick this up too well. Antonevich, I believe it says. And then underneath his signature it says made by Lionsteel, Italy. Down here on the flipper tang, steel D2. Uh-oh. Over here on this side you get the Typhoon name and then Dendra's logo. But doesn't it look like an 0200? You got a very pronounced recurve blade, a swedge, an organic drop point. One difference between the Typhoon and the 0200 is this big scallop, which is kind of interesting, and I'll get to that in ergonomics. Let's talk some dimensions real quick. The blade length on the Typhoon is 3 3/4 inches, 3.75. The handle length 5 1/4. Overall length is 9 inches. The weight, it's heavy, guys, 7.9 ounces. As we saw from the etching on the blade, the steel is D2, heat treated to 60 to 62 RC. The handle material, as I mentioned, is G10. This is contoured and 3D machined G10. Backspacer is also G10. The pocket clip is bright stainless, reversible left or right, tip up only, as it should be. The knife is a flipper, but I wouldn't say it's an extremely good flipper. We'll get to that after we talk about construction a little bit. As you notice, if you guys have been following Lionsteel or watching my channel much, this pivot is going to look very familiar. The Lionsteel pivot is what looks like a custom or proprietary pivot, and they do actually give you a tool in the box that is a spanner to adjust that pivot. But in the center of the pivot is a Torx fitting, and it's on almost every one of their knives. And then the suspension system to go along with that pivot, I think you can see in there, are some Teflon washers. Now, we've got a big heavy knife and a big heavy blade. I believe that's 4mm stock, so 156 thousandths thick, 3 3/4 inches long. You know, in order to support that solidly, it's not going to be a super free swinging blade without bearings, and it kind of takes perfect technique to flip without using any wrist. And if you notice, that flipper is extremely pointy, and it won't take much fondling or practice with that flipper before your index finger is going to develop some serious pain. Now, this knife is about as free as it wants to be without blade play. I've just finished sharpening it and sort of taken it to the spa. Polished up the internals a little bit, cleaned it, gave it some nice fresh light lubricant, the Daiwa Real Oil, which I've found works about the best with these Teflon bearings. And it does flip, but the amount of pressure I'm exerting in order to get that thing to flip quickly, you can see what it's doing to my finger. I'm left-handed, but for some reason my old baseball injury here on my left index finger makes me not quite as good flipping with my left index finger as I am with my right. Now, when we go to the thumb stud, things are rocket. I really almost would prefer this knife not have a flipper. It really is much more well suited to be a thumb stud knife. And do we really need that extra finger choil provided by the flipper with this handle design? I say we don't. I don't know how much weight we'd save by not having that flipper, but I think the knife actually performs better as a thumb stud knife. And I think Lionsteel's pivot design and washer design really lends itself better to being thumb deployed rather than flipper deployed. Okay, let's talk about construction once we get past the pivot. As you can see, super thick stainless steel liners that contribute to the weight. Although they are very well skeletonized, I'm not sure how much light we can get in here to show you. Maybe if I... there. And kind of interesting, once I got inside, the lock bar side liner, obviously hardened stainless steel and then stone washed almost to a mirror polish, and then the offside liner, not hardened, just has a satin finish on the inside, which I thought was kind of interesting. And the locking side liner is relieved much like a titanium frame lock would be to tune the tension, which is absolutely perfect. The lockup on this knife is excellent. As you can see, the engagement of the lock bar is full, meaning the whole surface of the lock bar, whole thickness of the lock bar engaged the blade tang, giving us what, about 65% lock engagement, which when I have stainless on stainless and the wear factor is going to be minimal, I think that's perfect. It gives us rock solid stability between tang and lock bar. There is absolutely no stick. No matter how I deploy the knife, the tension for release is just about perfect for a knife this size. You know, this large. It's authoritative. How about the noise when it opens? Is that authoritative? I think so. Pretty cool. The rest of the construction, if you look at the body screws, you have the female cup / locating post, and then the male screw, very much like on the Pull Force Mic 1. And I believe some of the Bastinelli Creations knives use this method too. I find it very efficient. This female cup or post is plenty strong and does all the locating work, so there's no need for a big heavy screw. A lot of people think, oh, those screws are so light, you know, they're not going to hold up. Well, they're really not doing much of the work. They're just basically supplying assembly force or holding a sandwich together. They're not really doing any of the heavy lifting from a shearing standpoint. And I find the heat treat on Lionsteel's screws to be very good. I've never had a head strip on one of them. If we look at the edges of this knife, this is one of the most impressive areas, I think. Hard to pick up on camera how good this is, but you know, we've got we have a knife sandwich of 5 layers here: 2 G10 slabs, 2 stainless steel liners, and 1 G10 backspacer. And all the finish work appears to be done after dry fitting, because the edges are completely seamless anywhere you go on this knife. And there are knives a lot more expensive than this that don't get that right. Let's take a look at the spine jimping. I think we're going to find the same thing. Notice how well the G10 and the stainless steel liners line up, the jimp cuts. Very impressive. And this is a knife, guys, that can be had for about 125 bucks. Online retailers, online eBay stores. A very well built knife. You know, I guess the knife that it's sort of reminiscent of, or maybe even designed after, the ZTO 200, about that same price range. The steel choice is a little different. The Dendra Typhoon using D2, which Lionsteel is one of Lionsteel's preferred steels. And the 0200 using 154 cm. Both great steels, slightly different. I call them kind of a draw. Just a little bit different properties on both, but of equal quality in my opinion. Pretty well made knife for $125, I would say. The machining on the G10 handle scales is interesting. It provides a lot of texture without being annoying. and it gives the knife some good visual appeal. I don't find that it provides a lot of grip, however. It appears to be machined and blasted, and there's just not a lot grabbing your skin there. Knife does have a lanyard hole, and it looks like a piece of gutted paracord would go through there just fine. The clip I find to be more than adequate. I've never seen Lionsteel mess up a clip. Kind of an interesting shape, not too adventurous, but a little bit different than the normal clip that we see. It should be just strong enough, and in fact it's pretty darn strong. But with this sort of smoothish G10, I don't think it's going to be much of a pocket grabber. I want to talk a minute about the pivots here. I don't know if you can, again, pick this up on camera, but take a look at that one. And then take a look at that one. Notice anything? Yeah, on this side, the drive size is a T8. On this side, it's a T10. And apparently, and Richard, you might want to weigh in the comments, somebody's tried to loosen this fastener. Looks like both with a Torx bit and with the spanner holes are kind of scratched up. I couldn't budge it either. I didn't try very hard because I didn't want to make things worse, but on this side the T8 came loose just fine. And the knife is not brand new. It looks like it's been used for a while. Don't really know its history. I don't know if it came from Lionsteel with two different size pivot screw heads, but it's kind of interesting, I thought. In fact, I'm going to make a video today talking about some sort of quality anomalies with Lionsteel products. This knife will be part of that, so stay tuned. I want to talk about this blade for a minute. Some good and some bad. Let's go for a quick wipe. If you guys have watched any of my videos on the Lionsteel SR1A, you know that they come with a really thick and really convex edge grind that is basically completely worthless, and they require a lot of work to be made into a sharp knife. The Typhoon, the Dendra Typhoon, I was pleasantly surprised to see something quite different. The knife is basically flat ground, although the flat does take on some contour as we go through the areas of the knife that, well, this recurve I think plays havoc with the grinding process, but it's not dead flat, but it's not hollow either. It's sort of a, excuse me, sort of has some high spots in it, which is kind of interesting. But it does come very thin behind the edge. I'm guessing 20 thousandths-ish, which for a blade this large and broad is pretty thin. The secondary edge bevel that I applied is at 17 degrees per side, and you can see it's not extremely broad. And it didn't require me to do a lot of stock removal. Sharpening the recurve is a challenge, of course, but it wasn't like I was, you know, at the bench for 3 hours just trying to remove material to get to a usable angle. The Typhoon did come sharp and it did come thin. It wasn't extremely consistent in its edge grind angle, but it wasn't bad for a production knife. Not bad at all. Now let's get to another aspect of this thing that makes me a little puzzled. I understand the flipper. I get it. I know why we have them. But in a knife with a flipper and no forward finger choil, in fact, if you try to put your finger up there, the knife will cut you. Why do we have this? Why do we have this swale in the spine of the blade? It is all I can do to reach my thumb up there, and my hand is so stretched in this position, if I cut anything, it would hurt. Every tendon in my hand is stretched to reach that, and I have sort of large size hands. Again, if this knife were not a flipper and maybe had a secondary or forward finger choil applied, how good would that be then? It would be very good. I have half a mind to go buy a Typhoon and do that mod myself. And we'd also mitigate some of the extremeness of that recurve if we got rid of this and made a forward finger choil. All this would disappear. Might make it kind of an interesting knife then, to me. Because right now it's probably not a knife I would buy. I sort of I view this knife more as a fashion statement than a usable knife. Which is kind of sad, because with a few minor tweaks it could be a pretty good tactical blade. Yeah, it might be now, I don't know. Just not for me. It just misses some things. The jimping on the spine looks aggressive, but doesn't really grab the thumb very well. It's not horrible, and frankly, you don't need it. With this large, deep finger choil and a Saber grip, you're never going forward on that knife. I'd almost prefer to see it not have any jimping at all. It'd make the flipper more comfortable to use. Because right now you have to push button it. If you try to pull back, you'll rake your index finger. I can't even make myself do it because I know the pain that's in store if I do. So it's kind of one of those knives that I think Cliff Stamp calls it designed by picture. You know, a designer takes some characteristics, some features on folding modern tactical knives that are in vogue right now, and he finds a way to incorporate them into one knife, and he makes it look cool. And well, you look at it online, you think, ooh, that thing is bad, and people buy them, and the price is right given the materials and the construction. You know, so you've got recurve blade, you've got jimping, you've got flipper, you got 3D machine contour G10. Jimping. Well, yeah, it's got all those things. But do they all work together to make a really good functional knife? I'm not sure they quite do. They almost do. In fact, ergonomically, other than this weird swale I can't reach, as far as gripping the knife, even though it's probably, I don't know, I mean, almost 3/4 of an inch wide and weighs almost 8 ounces, it's super comfortable in hand. The hammer grip is comfortable. The Saber grip is comfortable. The draw cut grip is very comfortable. I should be using my right hand just to see where the pocket clip falls. And it is good. Actually, it kind of gets me in the draw cut grip. I sort of have to split my fingers in an odd way. And in the reverse grip, the clip kind of bothers me too. It's actually better in my left hand. So, you know, again, it's a knife that it's just not quite good, I guess. It's really well built. It's made of high quality materials. It's inexpensive enough. You know, knives of similar construction, quality, and materials could easily sell for $150 to $175. $125 is a pretty good buy on this, but it's not a knife that I would carry every day. You know, would it look good sitting on the shelf in my collection? Yeah. I don't see a soldier carrying this knife, you know, and a true tactical operator. It's just too doggone heavy for what you get. But, you know, it's kind of a Ferrari, isn't it? Not super practical, pretty good performance and different. It's not a Corvette. One thing I can tell you though, it's got a really nice edge on it now. Look at that. It came out great. I love sharpening D2. Not wild about recurves, but I love D2. Just comes to such a great polish and such a sharp edge. Okay, Richard, this is going in a box, and if I can get to a post office sometime in the next couple of days, I'll get it back to you. Thanks for sending it. It's been great to take a look at it. Isn't it pretty? Grace to you and peace, my friends, from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the Word and Richard's Typhoon are sharp.